Alrighty, everybody. It is 6 p.m. on the hour. So we are going to go ahead and get started just to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to learn a little bit more about Montana State and our Parents as Partners program. With that, we do have a few housekeeping items to cover just super quickly. Um, if I could have my friend on the sharing his screens, hit the next slide for me. I would appreciate it. So if you are having any issues joining us this evening, you can feel free to call in if you can't hear us, although if you can't hear us, then you wouldn't know to call in, but feel free to call in if you're having trouble hearing us at any point throughout the evening. And then if at any point you need to head to dinner, whatever you have planned for the evening, if you need to head off early, that is okay. We will actually be sending out a link with the recording of this webinar out to you, hopefully tomorrow afternoon, if not early Friday morning. So be on the lookout. We will record all of this. We record all of our webinars, so no need to worry if you have to leave just a little bit early. And then the next thing we want to cover is we will be utilizing the Q&A feature for this webinar. So on our next slide here, we have kind of instructions for how to use our Q&A feature. It is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You can see three little dots. With those three little dots, just to make sure that everybody can find it, feel free to enter into the Q&A feature where you're joining us from. This is where you can also ask any questions that you might have throughout this webinar. We have an awesome team of admissions counselors who will be answering any and all of those questions that you might have. But now it is my turn to stop talking and kick it over to the real star of the show. We are joined by our Dean of Students, Dean Caires, and he will be talking a little bit more about our parent and family program, Parents as Partners, and he will be covering it all. So any questions you might have, we are here to help, but I will turn it over.
That's great, Emily. Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I am locked and loaded, parents out there. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Matt Caires, and it's been my privilege to serve as the Dean of Students at Montana State University the last 14 years. I'm not originally from Montana, but I've been here for the last 14 years. Previously, I was down in the great state of Wyoming, and I grew up in Idaho. So I'm sort of in the Rocky Mountain West, and so lucky to be here at Montana State now and being a part of this incredible academic community. So my guess is a lot of you are coming from out of state, and my guess is a lot of you from out of state might know something about Montana. I don't know how many have actually been here on campus or been here to Bozeman, but today lots of folks are learning about Montana through this show, the Yellowstone show, the Dutton Ranch. And we kind of cringe at that in Montana. I hope you know the Dutton Ranch, that's fiction. It's not real. It's a really interesting, provocative story, but a lot of the things that happen on the Yellowstone just simply are made up. But I know it's watched and a lot of folks like it, and I do admit there are some similarities between the Dutton Ranch and Montana State University. Like, for example, John Dutton. Kevin Costner plays John Dutton. He's the president and CEO of the Dutton Ranch. Well, guess what? We too have a president and CEO. Let me introduce you. This is President Waded Cruzado, and I have worked for Dr. Cruzado for 14 years. She's been our president now for 15, and we've done some pretty amazing things here at Montana State. So she will unfortunately retire this summer. I'm not sure you'll have a chance to meet her, but her legacy and her fingerprints are all over the place. So they're the leaders, John Dutton, Waded Cruzado, and President Cruzado's not here today. You have a different leader, and that, of course, is me, the university's Dean of Students. And I have a very unique and different job. I do lots of different things on campus. I guess if you were to cast me in Yellowstone, I would probably resemble this guy, Rip, similar disciplinarian, kind of trying to keep the branch standards upheld. So that's a part of what I do, is monitor the conduct code and do lots of other things, including wearing a hat. One of my major things I spend time on and think about and worry about are working with parents, and parents are incredibly important to me. And it's a different time. The parents who are out there today are probably my vintage. We're probably members of Gen X, and just a different time. And going to college than when we went to college. The relationship between the students and the parents are different. And because of that, we've created this program and our thinking around this, that we really partner with parents. We think they're critical. And so we communicate a lot, we work with you a lot, and we want to include you in many steps of the way on your student's journey. So today we're gonna get into this little sprint course. I offer a more elongated course during summer orientation. If you don't remember anything else I say today, is please come, bring your student, come to summer orientation. And some of you might think, well, I've sent other students off to college. I kind of get the drill, but yeah, we do something special here, and I want you here. I want you to come join us in June or July for summer orientation, because while your student's off learning about the roles and responsibilities of being a college student, we're going to do some training for you as well, because again, we think we have a unique program for our parents here. And I want to be clear, we want to help you. We want to guide you through a successful freshman year. And in the next 40 minutes, and I'm going to do this quickly tonight, we're going to go through a little bit of history. We're going to talk about the university's, student rights and how those rights have changed over the years into responsibilities. We're going to talk about a little bit of campus rules and resources. And finally, I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. I've been at this now. I figured it out. This is my 28th year working on a college campus. I've worked for 4 different college campuses, and yeah, always in the dean of students office, ironically. And I've got some advice over all those years on, what makes it work, what's a successful student do, and maybe some ideas on where students can get in trouble. So stay tuned, buckle up. Welcome to my sprint course, and we'll go through this pretty quickly here. Before I do, I want to admit something. Again, I've been doing this a long time, and for most of that time, I always felt when I stood in front of parents, I was a little bit of a fraud. I, know a lot about working with college students. I know a lot about the law and our work and responsibilities with college students. But the one thing I never was a parent. I was always trying to give parents advice, but I never felt like I quite was an authority, because I never was a parent. And that all changed. I want to introduce you. This is our 7-year-old. This is Rourke. And we call her, this is our sweet one. She is the firstborn and wonderful and loving, and just out of swim practice here. And then we have her little sister, Avonlea. And Avonlea is 4. And she's our spicy one, and doing the 2 things she loves most, eating ice cream and skiing. So yeah, we have a sweet one and a spicy one, and we're in it. We're 7 and 4. We've got lots of activities after school. My head is constantly on a swivel with trying to keep up with these 2. And yeah, it's been the best joy of my life being a dad. And so one of the things I love is hearing from parents, especially dads of daughters, advice on raising daughters. I'm all ears. I've got lots of advice on how to manage the relationship with your eventual college student, but I'd love to know your advice too. So consider this a 2-way street. When I'm in touch with you this fall, I really genuinely mean it. I want to hear from you, especially your best ideas, your do's and your don'ts for raising daughters. So there you have it. Okay, into the meat of things. Let's talk a little bit about the history of higher ed. And if you were here, I'd ask you, do you know anything about higher ed? I mean, what do you know? I mean, my guess is some of you went to college, some of you didn't, but yeah, did you know that we've been in the business of higher education for a long time? The first college founded in North America, get this for a second, 1636, Harvard College. Think about that. We were in the business of higher education almost 150 years before we were a country. We've been at this a long time, almost 400 years, and things were different. I mean, 400 years ago, college was really different. The colleges in America were small, religious. They were residential. They were all men. The college students usually started college around 14 or 15 years old. Many of the professors were 19 or 20. Most of the professors lived with college students, and so their role as educators didn't end when the classroom concluded. The lessons of character, the lessons of growth and morality, a lot of that happened after hours in the dining halls, in the residence halls, and that cross learning from your faculty was really 24 hours a day. When American colleges were founded, we were teaching schools. We were founded under the English model of teaching universities. And we don't see the research model creep in to American higher education really until the turn of the 20th century. And if you think back, the major issues, people like me, the folks who worried about rules and discipline, what were those student issues back 400 years ago? Well, if you do a little research, you'll find out it was getting students to go to class, listening to the rules, and drinking too much. We've had an alcohol culture on college campuses ever since we've had college campuses. So amazing how certain things don't change, but we continue to work on those issues even today. But some things have changed, and campus discipline was one of them. Back 400 years ago, we would beat students, we would flog them, we would box their ears in. We do lots of things back then that we just don't do now. We don't believe in now. In fact, legally, we can't do now. And why could we do those things? Well, those things 400 years ago, our legal relationship with college students is very different than it is today. That original relationship we had, the legal term was called in loco parentis. Some of you know this. It's the Latin for in the place of the parent. And yeah, we see this even in the legal literature from a long time ago. Sir William Blackstone talked about how, a father may delegate a part of his parental authority during his lifetime to the tutor or schoolmaster, who is then in loco parentis and has the power that a parent would to restrain and correct and to use that power for whatever means necessary. The college was legally the parent. We were in custody of the parent. In the eyes of the law, from the beginnings of American higher education, college students were not adults. They were children, and they needed discipline. They needed parenting, and the college served in that role in loco parentis. And student rights back then, did students have rights? Well, not really. Same rights that a juvenile, young person would. And one of my favorite court cases demonstrates this back even into the 20th century. We see a case at Berea College involving some students who, even 100 years ago, students at Berea College were testing the limits. And so Berea College is down in Kentucky, and those students were sneaking out. They were sneaking out of their residence halls, and they were going, when students sneak out of their residence halls, where do they go? Well, they go to the local bar, and that's true today, and that was true over 100 years ago. And students at Berea College, when the officials at Berea College heard about this, they made a rule, and they said, look, you can't do that. You can't sneak out. If you sneak out and you go to the bar, we're going to remove you as students. We're going to kick you out. And a couple of people didn't like that. The students didn't like that, but the bar owner didn't like that either. And his name was Gott. And Gott was upset, saying, you're taking money out of my pocket here by not letting students come to my bar. So Gott sued Berea College and said, you can't do that. You can't make a rule where students can't come to my location. And interesting, in 1913, the Kentucky Supreme Court disagreed with Gott and said, no, colleges stand in loco parentis concerning the physical and moral welfare and the training of their pupils. To that end, we can make any rule or regulation for the government or the betterment of the pupils that a parent would, unless it's unlawful or it's contrary to public policy, basically meaning you can't intentionally hurt the student. But yeah, if they're breaking the rules, we can do anything we want. We were the parent, and this was the law of the land. And there's a lot of case law that backs this up. And for over 300 years, universities kind of went along and followed this model where there was a dean of men and a dean of women, and we sort of disciplined students, and you kind of had to do whatever we told you to do. Some colleges, there were dress codes. Some schools, you'd have to wear, if you were a freshman, you'd wear a beanie. I mean, there were lots of things we used to be able to do that we can no longer do because really in the 1960s, late 1950s and early 1960s, we start seeing changes to college campuses. And we see this fall of in loco parentis. It's in large part because the college and university just started changing. Again, we see this research mission creep in. Around the turn of the century, we enter the industrial age, and we start seeing more granting opportunity. The federal government wanted universities to do more research, and so the role of the faculty changed. They started doing more research, and as they did more research, they became less and less interested and living in the residence halls. And when the faculty moved out from sort of that role model, policing student activities after hours in the residence halls, we had to sort of create different people, deans of men and deans of women and residence life staff and RAs that changed the nature of the university and the faculty and their work. And another change around the turn of the century, we start seeing women going to college campuses. In large part, that's relatively new in the history of American higher education. Women have only been enrolling on our college campuses for the last 100 years. So that drastically changed the college in many ways. And we plodded through the early 1900s. We went through a depression. We started creating clubs and organizations. We started doing intercollegiate athletics. We went from the Depression into World War II. And then after World War II, the country made a choice. Congress passed the GI Bill. And we decided one of the best things to do for these returning GIs was to send them to school. And college campuses exploded. Montana State University, we tripled in enrollment in less than 10 years. And many of those students were older by nature. They were returning veterans. So we had older students coming to campus, and we had different students coming to campus. And the students started challenging universities. They started pushing for different rules. Universities were still using these old models that we were the parents and we could discipline students the way parents would. Well, older students had different desires. They weren't used to being told what to do. I mean, these returning GIs had just fought in a world war all the way on the other side of the globe. And then, some dean of students was telling them they had a curfew and that they couldn't have their girlfriends come over to visit. So the students demanded in the 50s new freedoms. And in many ways, they got it. Students did lots of things. They protested, the free speech movement. Students were really active in the courtroom. And one court case that I want to talk about tonight, probably the most important court case for college students and college student rights that very few people talk about, is the Dixon case. This was a case in the late 1950s and early 1960s where 6 students at Alabama State College, a publicly funded institution, 6 African-American students decided that they would challenge segregation. They decided together that they would go into a restaurant and sit intentionally where they were not allowed to sit based on the Jim Crow law. And they caused a scene and they were arrested. There was a small riot that occurred. And the president of Alabama State College said, well, that is behavior unbecoming of a student, and summarily dismissed them, expelled them from school for their actions. And these students, they turned around, and here's 4 of the plaintiffs right here. These students turned around and said, well, that just doesn't feel right. We were arrested, but we shouldn't be expelled. And more importantly, we shouldn't be expelled without due process. We were acting in a very American way. We were expressing our dissatisfaction with Jim Crow. We were associating together all these rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Why would the college discipline us for us just using our constitutional rights? So they brought a lawsuit and they sued the state board, and this went up to the Fifth Circuit Appellate Court, and the appellate court agreed with the plaintiffs. And what happened from this case in 1961, that was the end of in loco parentis. That was the mark where the court said students are no longer children in the eyes of the law. Students are now considered adults with constitutionally protected rights. And when that happened, when we started treating students in the 1960s as adults, lots of things started changing, and some for better, some for worse, and it wasn't just the courts, by the way, that saw college students as adults in the 60s and the 70s. Congress passed a law. And in case you don't know this acronym, you should. FERPA, the Family Education Right to Privacy Act. That's a law, a federal law, still in existence today. It's over 50 years old, and it basically protects the privacy of young people. It's the reason why colleges can no longer share grades with parents without the student's permission. We can no longer share disciplinary records. We can't share lots of things because the federal government says college students are adults and they have a right to privacy. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how we work within that framework here in a bit. But Again, in the 60s, we changed the voting age. It was for a very long time in the country, to vote in the United States, you had to be 21. Well, in the 60s, we dropped it to 18. We said at 18, you're an adult and you deserve the right to vote. In many states, you could drink at 18. We weren't clear on this for a long time. The drinking age varied in the 60s and 70s. And in many states, at 18 or 19, you could drink alcohol. And as we progressed in the 60s, we see the Vietnam War and the battle over civil rights and the protest movement on college campuses. In 10 short years, from the fall of In Loco Parentis in the early 60s to the late 60s, early 70s, college campuses dramatically changed. This is when we were, in many ways, we were in chaos. We saw Kent State occur. We saw the free speech riots in California. And college deans and faculty, people who do what I do for a living, really disengaged. We kind of put our heads in the sand, in large part because we were told we had to. We were used to disciplining students as their parents, but now we were being told they were adults. And so we go into this sort of bystander era where we step back and say, well, college students, you're adults. We're going to let you be college students with more freedom. You wanted it this way, we're going to give it to you this way. And I love to ask parents, when we gave students more freedom in the 1970s, what happened? Animal House happened. That if you remember this movie in 1978, yeah, college campuses were crazy. I mean, we no longer controlled student behavior. Basically said at 18 it's legal to drink, and if you want to drink, you can drink. And we start seeing some dangerous things creep in. We start seeing rites of passages and initiation rites, and this idea of binge drinking until you're completely passed out. And I started this session talking about the challenges at Harvard College in 1636 with alcohol. And alcohol has been part of the college experience since the beginning of college. But what happened in the 70s was different. We started seeing this idea that you go to college to get drunk. And when we took that genie out of the bottle, we've been struggling to put that genie back in ever since. And when college students started drinking without any kind of parental control or university governance, they started getting hurt, started dying. And really, this era we have from the 60s to the 80s, this relationship we had with students moved from being parents to being bystanders. About the turn of about when Ronald Reagan was elected in 1980, the country really wanted something different. We wanted a return to normalcy, and this was post-Vietnam, and lots of things, the challenges that happened in the 70s. Well, college campuses got caught up in this as well, and it didn't happen overnight, but we started doing some reforms, and some of those reforms really have to do with drinking alcohol. And if you remember, as a country, we had this debate in the 80s, maybe we should change it back to 21. And if you know your history, the last state to adopt the 21-year-old drinking age, not Montana. I get people think it's Montana. Some people say Wisconsin. Anyone, I don't know who's out there from Wisconsin, but a lot of folks think Wisconsin was the last state. It's actually the equality state, the state of Wyoming. 1988, they become the last state to adopt the 21-year-old drinking age. And we send a message, that now a majority of college students are actually underage, and it's against the law. And it certainly didn't change the drinking culture overnight. In fact, in the 80s and 90s, when probably we were in college, there was lots of alcohol and underage drinking going on. I will tell you, the campus life is different now. The alcohol culture is different, and in many ways, it's better. Students still drink plenty underage, even at Montana State these days. But the drinking culture is different than in the 80s and the 90s. Congress also said there's a change. Congress revised FERPA, and they gave universities permission to selectively call mom and dad when there are serious problems, either alcohol related or health related. In times of emergencies, Congress changed the law in the late 90s and said college campuses can call parents. And I love that. Yeah, I think that's really important. It's important when a student is struggling, from drinking too much alcohol or, being taken to the hospital. We're going to call you. We want you to know that so that you can help us be part of that equation, either stabilizing the student, taking even a break from school if necessary. But yeah, to be part of that, to get that student back on track again. We appreciate that, what we call parental parental notification. Lots of scholars, when these changes started happening into the 2000s, started calling this a new in loco parentis. And I really bristle at that. There is no new in loco parentis. I cannot parent 17,000 students, and even though there's some that need it. There's no way I feasibly can do that. But what I can do is partner with you. And I remind people, most of our students have had wonderful parents. What we need to do is do a better job communicating, talking, and then selectively in times of real need to reach out and get them involved. So I like this idea of being a facilitator. The university, we are not their parent, but we're not the bystander. We won't be standing back and doing nothing. We are going to help facilitate their success. And one of the major ways we do this is, of course, through the work we do through our conduct code and the Dean of Students. But where does it leave us? Our college students today, are they adults? Are they bona fide adults? I do know we call parents their partners, but think about, your students probably still in their senior year of high school. Are they adults? We have some strong definition of what it means to be an adult, but you make decisions on your own, you're financially independent. You no longer need a parent to wake you up in the morning or to remind you to brush your teeth. I mean, there are certain things that adults do, and college students are they're not really there. They're not adults, but are they children? Are you going to drop off a child to us in August? That really needs to be monitored and going to class, and I no, that's not what we do either. So I love this idea. And if you want a little homework between now and the start of school, pick up the recent edition of Jeffrey Arnett's Emerging Adulthood. Jeffrey Arnett has been studying college age students for the last 30 years. And if he was here today, Dr. Arnett would say the measures, the markers of adulthood are pushed into later life these days, that students are achieving those markers later at 25 or even 30, where just a generation ago that many students were seeing some of those markers as early as 18 or 19. So developmentally, students are different today. And because of that, we do need different tools. And college students it's a funny group. Yeah, we Gen Z today, we love to make fun of them a little bit. They're pretty easy to make fun of, but I got to tell you, it's a really inspiring generation too. I love this generation of college students. It's why I still do this work, even though it's challenging every single day. There's something difficult comes across my desk. This generation is actually they're movers and shakers. They have some bad habits, and we can talk about those habits and the use of social media, the overuse of cell phones and beyond. But in general, this generation is a real inspiration, and I know many of us on campus believe that. And again, we're going to work with your students. At the Dean of Students office, we're just one of many services. When you come in June or July for summer orientation, you're going to hear from all of our different services. We have all these services geared for students to support them in their transition to college. My office in particular, we really focus on the lives of students, the lives of young people, and lives of young people as well as old people can sometimes be messy. And so we're there in those most messy times. If there's an injury while a student is skiing, if there's a problem back home, if there's a sickness or beyond, we work with students in all those challenging situations. We help students solve conflicts. We try not to solve those conflicts for them. We try to we pull them through adulthood with some skills on how to solve conflicts. We specialize in student safety. We work with our fraternities and sororities, and I mentioned earlier, we're the lead university unit in working with parents and family. And if you haven't checked out our website, you should, montana.edu/parents. Just an incredible clearinghouse of resources again for you. If you check it out now, great, but I'll remind you about that in the fall, because again, we want to make sure parents have access to all these services that our students do as well. I mentioned one of the chief things I do as Dean of Students is that we administer our conduct code. And no surprise, we think it's important to teach students lessons. Part of that conduct code is an alcohol and drug policy. And I will, during the summer orientation and beyond, be reminding students that the university actively enforces our 21-year-old drinking age. That to smoke marijuana in the state of Montana is 21 and older. And on our college campus, marijuana still being a federally prohibited substance, we enforce it as well. So even at 21, it's still considered illegal to possess or to use marijuana on our campus. So those are all important rules, and most of our students understand that. Most of our students, like throughout the last 400 years, they've pushed the boundaries on that. And so when they do, it's a great opportunity for me and my staff to meet with your student, to talk to them about our expectations. Generally violating the conduct code, we usually don't remove students the first time. We give them chances to learn their lessons and to have a second chance or even a third chance. But I'll tell you, by the third time the student violates the conduct code, we're going to have a serious conversation about moving out of our residence hall and potentially taking a break from campus. And even though we give students some room to learn and grow, there are some things students do that we have no tolerance for. And that includes sexual misconduct or violence, the possession of a weapon inside of a campus dormitory or a campus itself, or any other kind of hostile act towards other. One violation of any of these egregious things could get a student removed from campus on the first time. And we have some partners. So, we don't do this work alone. We have a campus civil rights unit, institutional equity, the University Police Department. We're also governed by what's called the Clery Act. The Clery Act requires universities to publish our crime statistics. And every year we come out with this report. You can take a look at it here. It's also available on our website, our annual security report. This is really important to me. This is a 100-page report that goes into detail on all the things we do in terms of campus safety and crime and beyond. I believe we're one of the few college campuses in the country that takes this report and we actually share it with parents. We'll send this to you twice, just so that you can track on some of the things we're worried about in terms of student safety. I believe one of the most important things in terms of improving safety is starting with education. And one of the ways we do that is by sharing our annual security report. We do have a strict rule about firearms on campus. Montana is a very Second Amendment friendly state. We have lots of students who come to campus and enjoy hunting and bring firearms with them. But we do have some policies that govern that use. We do allow firearms to be stored at our university police department. We're one of the few schools that has an actual storage location for students. Why? We think hunting is a pretty cool thing. We want students on occasions to go out and enjoy the outdoors. So we enforce our gun rules in terms of we don't allow guns in buildings or on campus that outside of the storage unit, and we do not allow storage to be kept in cars. And there are consequences for violating those rules. So we can talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A or later when you come. But again, we're trying to strike that balance with student rights. Students have rights to their firearms, to the Second Amendment. But there's some responsibilities we have and our students have to make sure that the campus is safe. And we have lost students in the past to suicide, and it's nothing more tragic than losing a young person. So we've tried to find that right balance between rights and responsibilities, and our firearms policy is just one of the ways we do that. Now, this is part of the presentation where I'd say you've been a great audience. I can't tell if you've been a great audience. I hope you're paying attention out there, but my guess is hopefully you're pretty interested in what I have to say. But I'm going to round a corner here in terms of tips. Again, some tips I've put together over the years. I've tried to be really clear with parents. My job is to make sure you know as much as I do to get your student's journey off on the right foot. And so I'm going to be really clear and direct in all the advice I'm going to give you. And that advice doesn't end tonight. I mean, I'm going to help you when you come here for summer orientation. And then again, we communicate with parents on a very regular basis. I send 2 emails a month to parents just with simple updates on things they should know. And when you get that email from me, it's actually from me. You write back, there's no assistant and there's no AI. It's actually me. It's called me old-fashioned, but I think we should continue to communicate and take that responsibility seriously. When parents contact me, I try to get back to them within the day. So here you go, some tips 28 years later that I've learned about working with college students. And this is out of date. This is not move-in day. Don't look at this date. This is from last year. But I will tell you, if you come in the summer, I hope you come in the summer for orientation and then enjoy the rest of summer, but I want you to come back. I'll ask Emily out there to track me down the actual move-in weekend. I want to make sure these parents know because you don't want to miss move-in. When we went to school, when I went to school, my parents drove me down to the college campus. My dad slipped me 20 bucks in my chest pocket and he said, "Son, we'll see you at Thanksgiving." And there was no one there to help me move in, and there was no one there to help my parents with moving in. In fact, my parents didn't help me move in. Things have changed, and our move-in weekend is something actually quite special. We invite parents in. We want you to participate. We roll out the red carpet for our new students. The president sends an email and says, "If you get a paycheck from Montana State University, she expects you to be out helping students move into their residence hall." So there's going to be a fleet of people helping our students move in, and including me and my staff will be down there as well. So come back. Please come be part of Move In. Plan to spend the weekend with us. It's a really special time. It's a really emotional time. I can't believe it's a privilege for me. I get to be a part of this transition where a young person moves out of their home where they've lived and it's been warm and cozy for 18 years. And then all of a sudden they move into this residence hall. It's an incredible step in a young person's life. It's an important step in the family dynamics, and I get to be a part of it. So I enjoy every move-in weekend. I'm a big part of it, and I can't wait for this next year. But that said, parents, if you come for a move-in weekend and you fall in love with Montana State and Bozeman and you love it here, one of the bits of advice I'm going to give you is leave afterwards. You can't stick around, and some parents, a handful of parents, sometimes don't get that. And I'll be honest with you. It's never the dads. It's always the moms. It's never the moms with the daughters. It's always the moms with the sons. They stick around. They make sure their son knows where he's going on his first day of class. They'll walk him to class. Some parents might even go to class the first day, and nothing more awkward than having your mom show up to class on the first day. So let's be clear, your job is to help them get them started and then eventually go away and take a break and let them get established on their own. And then again, we want you back. Sorry, again, this is last year's slide deck, but we want you back. Parent Family Weekend. I do know that weekend. It's the same weekend in October, the 10th and 11th, I believe. Please come back for Parent Family Weekend. It's an incredible show. It's always around a home football game, and we want you back. So come for move-in day, go away, let your kid learn and grow for about 8 weeks, and then come back for Parents Weekend. And in the meantime, ask open and difficult questions. Some of you are going to ask your student, "Well, how's it going? Your first semester, how's it going?" And they're going to say, "Fine." Well, how was class today? Good. And don't let them off the hook. I want you to start probing a bit more. I want you to ask them difficult questions. I want to ask them about their social life. What are they doing after class? How are things with their roommates? Do they know who their professors are? Have they met their professors? If they don't know their professor's name by the second week of school, that's a red flag, and you should actually know and be asking that question. So, keep pushing them. And in case you're kind of stuck on what questions you should be asking, we wrote you a guide. It's listed on the parents' website, the Parents Guide to Difficult Questions. We want the first 8 weeks to make sure that you're pushing your student. And again, I can't parent all 17,000, but you can help. One of the traps some students fall in is in college, they don't take attendance. A lot of professors don't take attendance. And so the student thinks, well, if they're not going to count me here, maybe I can skip class. No. College is your job. You need to show up every single day and go to class. And so need your help with asking those difficult questions to make sure that students are getting off on the right foot. Again, we're going to be in touch. We're going to be coaching you along the way. So read our emails, engage in our process. We're going to help you make sure that you're doing all the right things in that first semester. Yeah, money. We got to cover money at a certain point because, college students, there's lessons they learn. And one of the things I'll coach you on throughout the semester is establishing that budget. making sure that students have a monthly budget. And of course, I'm going to suggest every student get a job while they're here. And that's a personal choice, and that's a discussion you and your student will have eventually. But in general, one of the ways you can help is by not giving them all the money they ask for. Students at times, college is expensive, but yeah, making sure that students are learning to live within their means is an incredibly important lesson for students to learn as a young adult. And so I like to remind parents when we were in college, we would eat a lot of ramen. Ramen for us, ramen builds character. So, yeah, let's bring some of that living within our means back to the college experience. And your student, they might complain. They might get upset. They might not like their RA and the rules we have in our residence halls. They might not like one of their professors. They might get a bad grade on a quiz. And yeah, I expect them to complain to you. I expect them to. If they're not complaining to you about how tough college is, maybe we're not doing our job. College is supposed to be challenging. That's the point, is we grow students and we challenge them by doing so. So let them complain, let them struggle. And I try to remind parents, it is never okay. It is never okay for a parent to contact a professor at a college campus. It's just never okay. And if a parent thinks that there's something wrong with a grade or a class, I tell parents, well, call me. I'll coach you and I'll help you through this. But we want our students talking to professors. And anytime a parent gets involved, it just becomes really awkward and uncomfortable. The federal privacy law kicks in, and then it just gets weird. So, parents, hear me out. This is college. And parents, there are certain ways you should be involved. Calling professors are not one of them. So, again, lots of coaching on that topic coming up later on this summer and then eventually in the fall. I get this question a lot. What about bringing a bike to campus? I love this. One of the bits of advice I tell parents, don't bring a car. And, parents will push back and say, well, it's really hard. I need Johnny back on the ranch to help me with harvest. And how do we get, we fly him there and how's he supposed to get around? I get all that. Doesn't mean it's easy, but I don't like the fact that our first year students have cars. It worries me. It worries me because driving happens to be one of the most dangerous things our college students do, not just in Bozeman, but all over the country. The number one reason young people die at 18 to 25 is through vehicular accidents. So be cautious on bringing a car. Be cautious on bringing a car if they're not used to driving in snow. Because students with a car, they'll use it. They'll go out into the backcountry. They'll go up to Bridger Bowl. And while I believe in a lot of those activities are good, I think a lot of those activities are a privilege that students should earn. And they earn that by demonstrating that they can succeed in college after the first semester with a solid GPA. These are the conversations you need to have with your student in terms of, what are we willing to do and how are we willing to negotiate? But if it was my student, I would let them know I'd support them bringing their car after a 3.5 GPA. If they achieve a 3.5 their first semester or their first year, then by their sophomore year, they can have their car. But the first year, I want our students here. I want them on campus. I want them working. I want them studying. And so, yeah, be cautious on bringing a car. You can get anywhere in the city of Bozeman by 15 minutes on bike. And I can attest to that because on most days I ride my bike to campus. Again, we want our students to meet their professors. Parents will need your help to do this because meeting a professor is actually pretty hard to do. I mean, when you're 18 and your professor is in their 50s and they have a PhD, and it's kind of awkward to go meet someone you don't know. And so we're going to need your help, and I'm going to give you some advice on how to make that easier later on this summer. Again, got to get them to go to class. Some students think they shouldn't go. It's unless you're really sick, students need to know going to college, going to class, it's your job. It should take you around 30 to 40 hours a week to be in college. Your other time, you can hold down a small, 10-hour a week job. You can get involved in a club or two. But yeah, going to class is the number one priority you have as a college student. And again, we value students getting involved. We know when students are involved and they serve on their residence hall senate or they join a club, they actually do better in school. Lots of research out there that says they graduate faster and they get better grades. So Montana State, we have over 200 clubs and organizations. There's lots of ways we bring those clubs and organizations out to students so they know who they are right at the start of the fall. And yeah, we will again be offering some coaching for you this fall on that. And then the final thing, we want our students to have a job. 10 hours a week. Students, typically are in 15 credits. A full load on a college campus is 15 credits. That means they're typically in class 15 hours a week. 15 hours a week, there's a lot of time on the clock left where students can do other things besides not studying. And so I want to fill some of that time with some structure, especially for those students who need some structure. So just one of the advice, students who have jobs generally do better as students. And so if your student needs it, regardless if they need it or not, encourage a campus job. And then finally, again, we're here to help. We have lots of ways for parents to contact us, our website. We have a phone, a hotline. We have an email address. If you need help in Montana State University, it's a big place. It's a big bureaucratic place. And sometimes it's easy to get lost. And so contact us. We're going to help make sure we get you or your student to the place they need to be to get the help they need. And this is my final slide. I'll leave my contact information up here. This is my phone number, my website, my email. By all means, if there's anything I've said tonight that you like or don't like or disagree with or agree with or have questions on, you are welcome to email me after the webinar is done. And at that, my dear friends in admissions, I'm going to button it up and take a few questions and see if you have anything else on your mind.
Awesome. Thank you so much for what a wonderful presentation. I feel like I even learned something, and I'm not a parent. I'm a former college student. With that, one of the questions we got asked a lot was about move-in, and so I just want to cover that super quickly for parents. Move-in will be August 17th through 19th, and then the first day of classes will be August 20th. But if you attend orientation number 4, that last orientation, you do have the opportunity to move into your residence hall a day early. So just to reiterate once again, August 17th through the 19th to move into your residence halls. And then moving right along, one of the questions we saw quite a bit was, when is Parent and Family Weekend?
Let me check. And I'm sorry, parents, I did not catch those dates when I was updating my slides, but I'll tell you, I have it written down. It's not out official yet, but it is unofficial. The unofficial Parents Weekend is October 10th, 11th, and 12th. It's the same exact weekend as it was last year, just a day later. So October 10th, 11th, and 12th. And honestly, it might be a little too early, but the hotel rooms will sell out. So one of the things you can do if you want to come, book a hotel room because they will eventually sell out.
Awesome. Good tip. The other thing parents can also look at is if they go to the MSU admissions website, we do have some partners throughout Bozeman as well that sometimes offer discounts to people who are coming. So don't be afraid to do a little research if you'd want a discount. One of the questions we saw a lot is, and I know you covered this, but just to make sure that we cover it once more, can parents check their students' grades, their attendance? I know my parents watched my grades a lot in high school, but can parents do that when students come to college?
Well, great question. And there is the short answer is no, they can't. They can't because professors don't publish attendance. There is no parent portal, and professors generally don't publish grades. They publish grades at the end of the semester. So can parents look at grades in December? The short answer is yes, they can. But to do so, you need your student's permission to log into their portal to do so. So there's no way the university has a portal for a parent to log in. That portal is the student's portal. And again, that's a conversation between the student and the parent. If the student's okay with offering you the password, parents are welcome to go in and check out as much stuff as they want.
And then one of the questions we got that I think is super helpful is if a student maybe is walking home from the library, getting back to their dorm, and maybe doesn't feel super safe, it's late at night, what resources are available to them?
Well, great question. And I'll tell you, I do not worry about students walking on campus late at night. Every year, we do a late night walk around with students from our student senate and our safety department and our facilities. Montana State University is probably the safest place in the city of Bozeman in terms of being well lit, access to resources. We have phones available, we have police available. Students are always welcome to call and get an escort. But walking from the library to the residence hall, I don't worry about that. What I do worry about is students walking from off campus. You can literally, it's palpable. You walk across the street from campus to off campus, and it is very different. It is darker. I worry about students coming, going to fraternity events, from off campus apartments. And that's where, most of our students, their freshman year, live on campus. But when they transition to off campus, there's another important set of skills that come with living off campus, that come with being an adult. And again, we offer lots of training on what those skills are. The simplest skill, the most important thing students, especially late at night if they're socializing, is to socialize together, have friends, have people they know and that they agree upon, going together, leaving together, and looking out for each other. So again, lots of those coaching and adulting tips, Leah, coming to your student and coming to you later on this fall.
Awesome. And then one question I thought was really great, and I know your office runs a lot of this, is what other ways can parents get information from MSU besides a newsletter? So what other information can we share with parents, or that what does your team do to share other ways of forms of communication with parents?
Yeah, well, great question. In 2015, MSU made the decision that we would bring parent communication into the fold of all other university communication. So just today, the president every month sends out what she calls her blue and gold news. It's just sort of a summary of all the major things going on campus and beyond. And parents will get blue and gold news. They'll be included in the president's update. They get my bi-monthly updates. And yeah, we hear from parents at times that we share too much information. So you don't worry. We will be telling you all the things you need to know in a timely way. I always remind parents, it's right now, it's priority registration week. You should be talking to your students about their advisors and setting up a meeting. And if students aren't registered for classes by the end of March, well, you need to push them to go register for classes. So we give lots of parents insider tips to make sure they know the right things to ask in working with their student.
Great. And then I know your office works a lot with with our wellness here, our wellness center here on campus. But do you know of what resources are available to students who maybe are struggling in some classes, need some extra help, and who can they reach out to if they're far away from home and just need some extra support?
I am so proud. One of the best services that I think we offer is our Math Stats Center. We have a program in Romney Hall, and it always shocks me when I go in there. There are usually 10 to 20 students working in the Math Stats Center, and you know who they are. They're carrying their little clipboard around. And they're really good at math. These are students, math majors, graduate students. And in the room, there are tables marked by section. There's the algebra table, the calculus table, the trigonometry table, the stats table. And no matter what math you're in, there's a table for you. And so students struggling in math, all they need to do is walk in at the door, sit down at the table. And I remind students, if math isn't your forte, you need to go to your class. You need to go to class every day. And as soon as you're done with math, go to the Math Stats Center. And that's where you should do your homework. And if you do that 3 times a week for 15 weeks, you're going to be on a first name basis with those 10 to 20 people with a clipboard. They're going to want to help you. They are going to help you, and they're going to be cheering for you. And there is no way you can fail your math class if you take your responsibilities that seriously. Go to class, go do your homework. There's no way you can fail. And the list goes on and on. We've got the Math Stats Center. We have the Writing Center, which offers the same kind of service. If you're required to write a paper, you upload that paper to the Writing Center. A day later, a tutor will meet with you and go through the pros and the cons of your writing. And chemistry tutor. I mean, the list goes on of all the things we do. A counseling center, a wellness center, a fitness center. The resources are mind blowing we have. But the number one challenge is getting students to use them. We can talk till we're blue in the face about the Math Stat Center or the Counseling Center, but getting students to walk in the door, that's our biggest challenge. That's where parents come in. And that's where, again, this team, we formed this partnership between our office and the parents. We really try to leverage and saying, here's what the resources are. And I try to give parents permission to still be parents. What does that mean? You can still require your student to do certain things. I know you're thinking to yourself, well, at 16, I can't require him to do anything, and he lives at home. Well, again, that's you negotiate those things with your son or your daughter. But in college, you still can require them to do certain things. You can still be the parent. In fact, I would encourage you to be the parent and to be serious about it. I've worked with so many great parents over the years. I had one parent draw up a contract, literally a contract with his son on the things he expected. If you expect me to pay your tuition, here are the expectations I have for you. And I love that parent's contract. I use it as an example of a parent, even though the parent was a distant down in Denver, still requiring the student to do certain things. And that for certain students is really needed to make sure that they're getting off on the right foot.
Awesome. And then one thing I saw a lot of questions on is I know you gave some tips about kind of tips and tricks for parents, but is there anything you didn't mention that you would recommend for parents? Any tips, any words of wisdom for parents that are sending their kids to college here in the next few months? Anything you would tell them?
Yeah, this time in your life with your graduating senior and eventually the last summer and this transition to college, it's just an incredible thing. I mean, there's nothing to get me emotional faster than talking about my 7-year-old and her eventual move out of the home into college. So I got about 10 years before I'm really hit with that in the face. But my advice is enjoy it. Enjoy this time. Help your student. You know them better than anyone else. If they need certain help doing adult things, the time is now. You have until basically now until August to coach them on how to get out of bed on time, how to show up to their job on time. If they have a problem meeting older people, that's a challenge, because their professors are going to be older people. And so coach them, encourage them, give them practice. Meeting 40 and 50-year-olds, just if you're not good at it and you're awkward and uncomfortable, just make them practice. Practice it. When you have friends over and they're in your backyard this summer, make your student have a 5-minute conversation. Carry some small talk. Because if they can do that in your backyard, it's going to make life a lot easier when they have to do that to a professor in their office here on campus. So push them a bit on those adult skills. Again, I have that list of difficult conversations on our website. And I don't know how much you need to lean into that right now. I mean, questions on alcohol, drugs, choices, sexual choices, and beyond, all of those things can come with time. I guess some of you are already having those conversations with your student, but the transition to college, those things become more real. Because why? Because you're not nearby to continue to coach them. And so we will do our best to offer those lessons. But again, we're going to be in partnership with you on how to do so.
Awesome. That was very good words of wisdom. And then the last question I have here for you is you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but is there a way that the Dean of Students Office can work with parents if maybe a parent notices their student isn't doing well or is having a hard time? Or is there a way the Dean of Students can notify parents? And how does that process work for parents and
Uh,
students? Really, Dean of
great.
Students.
Great question. And we're very active in this space. We want parents to talk to us. We want parents to tell us when their students are struggling. We want students to tell us when students are struggling. We have a whole program and 2 teams that work every single day to refer what we call care referrals. On the Dean of Students website, we have a program called the CARE program. And that's the way, that's the place anytime a student is struggling. And the struggles might be as simple as homesick, they can't make friends, mental health, or potentially even harming themselves. Anywhere on that continuum, we want to hear about those student struggles. And then we have staff in my office who will help work through those referrals and reach out to students and offer help. So please, again, lots of coaching on that downstream, but our care program is out there. And if you have a student here and if they're struggling, by all means, send us a care referral.
Awesome. And just so everyone knows, the care referral is on the Dean of Students website. If you just go to montana.edu and put in Dean of Students in the search bar, their website will pop up. If you are ever concerned about your student, want somebody at Montana State to reach out to them, the Dean of Students office is an awesome resource. But with that, we are going to end this webinar. Thank you, Dean Caires, for hanging out with us for the last hour. Parents, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You will get a follow-up email tomorrow as well with a recording of this webinar in case you missed anything. Dean Caires' contact information will also be in that as well. So if you need anything at all, please reach out to us. And thank you so much for spending the evening with us. Have a great night, everybody.
Go Bobcats.
Go Bobcats.